are silences that heal, and there are silences that consume. The trick is knowing which one you've been invited into. Dr. Elian Marris promised the first kind. He built a temple to it, a sanctuary for the sleepless who haunted the blue-lit hours between midnight and dawn. He called his practice the Somnus Clinic, a gentle name for a place where people learned to rest. But some of his patients found a rest so profound they never left it. This is not a ghost story. It's a story about a voice and the quiet command it carried beneath the promise of peace. The file landed on Dr. Ava Rourke's desk with a soft, clinical thud. It was the third one in 6 months. Another chart, another life condensed into diagnoses and discharge summaries. But this one, like the two before it, didn't have a discharge summary. It had a coroner's report. Dr. Ben Carter stood opposite her desk, arms crossed, his face a mask of professional detachment that couldn't quite hide the unease in his eyes. He tapped a finger on the laminated cover. Julian Croft, 46, tech CEO, acute chronic insomnia. No prior history of suicidal ideation. Found in his bed by his housekeeper. Peaceful, they said. Too peaceful. Ava opened the file. The photograph of Julian Croft showed a man who looked perpetually startled, his eyes wide, the skin beneath them bruised with exhaustion. He had the haunted look of someone who had stared into the void for too long and was terrified it had stared back. She scanned the pages. No illicit substances. No signs of struggle. No note. The official cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest, but the addendum was what snagged her attention. A single, curious sentence from the medical examiner, circumstances inconclusive, pending further review. What does inconclusive mean, Ben? Ava asked, not looking up. A healthy 46-year-old's heart doesn't just stop. That's the thing, Ben sighed, pulling up a chair. It's the same as the others. Annika Sharma, the artist, found in her studio 2 months ago, and before her, Elian Marris, the widow. Same story. Severe insomnia. No underlying conditions that would explain this. They just switched off. Ava felt a cold prickle on her arms. She pulled the other 2 files from a locked drawer beneath her desk. She had kept them, unable to shake the feeling that a vital piece of the puzzle was missing. She laid all 3 out, side by side. Annika Sharma, ethereal and pale, surrounded by half-finished canvases. Elian Marris, her face a roadmap of grief, clutching a framed photograph of her late husband. And now, Julian Croft. A trinity of the exhausted. They were all wealthy, Ava murmured, tracing the addresses with her finger. And isolated. Annika was a recluse. Elian's children live overseas. Julian's work was his life. No close family. Easy targets, Ben offered, his voice low. Ava shook her head. Targets for what? There's no financial angle. Their estates are intact. Nothing was stolen. It's not a crime, Ben. It's an anomaly. She continued to flip through the pages, her mind working like a fine-toothed comb, searching for a thread. She found it on the last page of Julian Croft's intake form, under previous and concurrent therapies. A name. Dr. Elian Marris. The Somnus Clinic. Treatment. Voice-led hypnotherapy. Her blood ran cold. She grabbed the other files, her hands moving with a new urgency. There it was. Annika Sharma's file referred to Dr. Elian Marris. Elian Vance's file, concurrent treatment with Dr. Marris. It was the only common denominator. A therapist specializing in insomnia. Ben, she said, her voice tight. They all saw the same doctor. Ben leaned forward, his eyes scanning the names. A flicker of recognition, then dismissal. Marris. I've heard of him. He's a bit of a guru. All that mindfulness and meditative nonsense. Rich people love that stuff. It's probably just a coincidence. These were high-stress individuals. But Ava knew it wasn't. You don't see a statistical cluster like this in psychiatry and call it coincidence. You call it a pattern. She looked at the photos of the deceased, at their tired, desperate eyes. They had sought peace. They had sought a quiet mind. They had gone to a man who promised to guide them into the stillness. A final, damning detail caught her eye. It was from the scene report in Julian Croft's file. A small, almost insignificant observation noted by the first officer on the scene. Subject was wearing a pair of high-end, noise-canceling headphones. The device was still powered on. Ava slammed the file shut. The quiet thud echoed in the silent room. It felt less like a clue and more like a premonition. The silence they sought wasn't healing. It was a carefully constructed trap. And the bait was the promise of a single good night's sleep. Booking an appointment with Dr. Elian Marris was like applying for membership to an exclusive club. Ava, using a burner phone and a fabricated identity, Anna Mercer, a freelance graphic designer buckling under the stress of deadlines, spoke to an assistant whose voice was so placid it was almost unnerving. The woman didn't ask for a referral. She asked about Ava's relationship with silence. The Somnus Clinic was located in a renovated heritage building downtown, sandwiched between a sterile investment firm and a chic art gallery. There was no sign, only a discreet brass number on a heavy oak door. The moment Ava stepped inside, the city fell away. The air was cool still, and smelled faintly of lavender and old paper. The walls were lined with acoustic panels disguised as minimalist art. It wasn't a doctor's office. It was a sensory deprivation chamber masquerading as a lobby. Elian Marris emerged from an inner office precisely at the time of her appointment. He wasn't what she expected. He was neither a cold academic nor a new age guru with flowing robes. He was a man in his late 50s, dressed in a simple, well-tailored gray suit. He had kind eyes, a salt and pepper beard trimmed with surgical precision, and a presence that was immediately, disarmingly calming. He radiated a quiet authority. "Miss Mercer," he said, his voice a low, resonant baritone. It was a voice you could build a house on, a voice you could trust with your deepest fears. "Thank you for coming. Please." He led her into his consultation room. It was the room from the video. The same gray walls, the same leather recliner. Everything was designed to soothe, to eliminate friction. He sat opposite her, not behind a desk, but in an identical chair. It created an illusion of equality, of shared space. "Tell me about the noise," he began, his hands resting gently on his knees. Ava launched into her prepared story. The pressure, the anxiety, the way her thoughts raced in the dark. She spoke of lying awake, watching the clock tick towards another exhausted day. She was a good actor, but she found herself weaving threads of her own genuine anxieties into the narrative. The fear of failure, the weight of responsibility. Marris listened. He didn't take notes. He just watched her, his gaze patient and unwavering. It felt like a confession. "You believe rest is something you must earn," he said when she finished. It wasn't a question. "You see sleep as a reward for a day well spent. But what if it isn't a reward? What if it is the source, the well from which all good days are drawn?" His philosophy was seductive. He dismantled her anxieties with simple, elegant logic. He made her feel seen, understood. For a terrifying moment, she forgot why she was there. "I use a method I call voice leading," he explained. "I will guide you through a simple meditative narrative into a state of deep relaxation. Your mind already knows how to sleep, Anna. It has simply forgotten the path. I am merely a guide, reminding it of the way home." He gestured to a small, velvet-lined box on the table between them. He opened it. Inside, nestled in the black fabric, was a pair of headphones. They were sleek, matte black, with no visible branding. They looked heavy, substantial. They were identical to the ones described in Julian Croft's file. "These are specially calibrated," Marris said, his voice dropping into an even softer register. "They deliver sound across a unique frequency range, designed to bypass the conscious mind's resistance. They will help my voice reach the part of you that truly needs to hear it." Ava's heart hammered against her ribs. a frantic bird in a cage of her own making. This was it, the weapon. She feigned reluctance, a flicker of skepticism. Headphones. Think of them not as headphones, he corrected gently, but as a key to a quieter room inside you. He handed them to her. They were cool and heavy in her hands. She could feel the quality of them, the dense, sound-dampening material. As she slipped them on, the last vestiges of the world outside vanished. The low hum of the building's ventilation, the distant traffic, all gone. There was only a profound, bottomless silence. It was terrifying. And then his voice. It wasn't in the room anymore. It was inside her head. "Breathe, Anna," the voice said, a smooth, warm current in the absolute void. "Just breathe. We will begin." Ava surreptitiously activated the micro recorder hidden in the clasp of her blazer. She closed her eyes, surrendering to the performance. The narrative began. He spoke of a forest, of walking down a path of soft moss, of the setting sun casting long, golden shadows. It was beautiful. It was deeply, powerfully relaxing. Her manufactured anxiety began to dissolve, replaced by a genuine, heavy-limbed drowsiness. But beneath the poetry, she felt something else. A subtle pressure, a vibration so low it was more a feeling than a sound, a thrumming that seemed to resonate directly with her bones. It was unnerving, a ghost in the machine of his perfect, soothing voice. She fought to stay focused, to analyze, to remain the scientist. But the voice was relentless, pulling her deeper. The session ended. He gently tapped her shoulder. When she took the headphones off, the world rushed back in, harsh and loud. She felt dazed, as if surfacing from a great depth. "How do you feel?" Marris asked, his kind eyes searching hers. "Quiet," she managed to say. It was the truest word she could offer. He smiled, a gentle, paternal expression. "Good. That is the beginning. I will send you home with a recording of our session. Listen to it before bed. We will build on this foundation next week." Walking out of the clinic and back onto the bustling street was a jarring transition. The city noise felt like an assault. Ava felt strangely vulnerable, exposed. The silence he had created lingered, an echo in her skull. And beneath it, she could still feel the phantom thrum of that low, hidden frequency. He hadn't just given her a therapy session. He had planted a seed. Back in the sterile safety of her own apartment, Ava's carefully constructed composure began to fray. She uploaded the audio from her micro recorder to her laptop. She put on her own studio-grade headphones and pressed play. Elian Marris's voice filled her ears, as hypnotic as it had been in his office. The guided meditation of the mossy path, the setting sun. It was all there. She listened intently, straining to hear the subterranean hum she had felt, the vibration that had set her teeth on edge. There was nothing. She isolated the audio, ran it through a spectrum analyzer, searching for anomalies in the frequency display. The waveform was clean. His voice registered in the normal human vocal range. The background was pure digital silence. It was a pristine recording. The police would laugh her out of the room. There was no evidence. Frustration gnawed at her. Had she imagined it? Was she so convinced of his guilt that she was projecting malice where there was none? The doubt was a corrosive acid eating away at her certainty. She leaned back, rubbing her temples. Her own exhaustion was beginning to blur the lines. For 3 nights, she hadn't slept properly, trying to get into the mindset of her alias. Now, the fatigue was real. Marris's voice, still playing on a loop, was a siren song. It would be so easy to just let go, to close her eyes and drift. She shook herself awake, anger flaring. She pushed the laptop away and went to the window, staring down at the city lights. The victims' faces swam in her mind. Annika, Elian, Julian. They had been tired, just like this. They had been offered a key to a quieter room. The headphones. It had to be the headphones. They deliver sound across a unique frequency range, he had said. What if the frequency was so low it couldn't be captured by a standard microphone? What if it was infrasound, a frequency below the normal limit of human hearing? Something felt rather than heard. It was used in military applications for crowd control. It was known to induce feelings of anxiety, dread, and even hallucinations. But could it be used to suggest, to program? She needed a better recording. She needed his original file. The next few days were a waking nightmare. She forced herself to listen to his recording each night, playing the part of the compliant patient. Each time, the pull of his voice was stronger. Her sleep became a landscape of strange, disjointed dreams. She dreamt of a forest with no trees, only shadows. She dreamt of a path that spiraled downwards into darkness. In one dream, she saw her younger brother, Michael, who had taken his own life in college. He was standing at the edge of the shadowy forest, and he smiled at her with Elian Marris's eyes. She woke up screaming, her heart pounding. The dream had felt terrifyingly real, a violation of her most private grief. He was getting in. His voice, his methods, they were bypassing her defenses, digging into the soft soil of her subconscious and finding the things she kept buried. Her second session was worse. She was on edge, her nerves raw. Marris noted her agitation with a serene nod. The process can sometimes stir the silt at the bottom of the river, he said calmly. It is a sign that the current is moving again. Do not be afraid. We will go deeper today. He placed the headphones on her head. The silence crashed down. This time, when his voice began, she was ready. She focused past the words, past the story of a calm ocean tide. She focused on the feeling, the thrum. It was there, stronger this time. A deep, resonant pulse that seemed to originate in her chest and radiate outwards. It wasn't just a vibration, it was a presence. A low, guttural note humming just below the threshold of hearing. And this time, she thought she heard something else. Woven into the infrasound, like a thread of poison in a tapestry. A whisper. A single word repeated over and over, so low it was almost subliminal. Let, just that. A single syllable, a release. Let go. Ava's breath hitched. Her professional focus shattered, replaced by a primal fear. This was real. It was happening. She feigned a deeper state of relaxation, keeping her breathing even, her body still. She let him finish the session, her mind a whirlwind of terror and vindication. When she left the clinic, she didn't go home. She went to an electronics store that specialized in audio surveillance equipment. She explained to the clerk that she was a sound engineer working on a project involving low-frequency acoustics. She bought the most sensitive parabolic microphone they had, a device capable of capturing sounds far beyond the range of the human ear. She had the tool. Now, she just needed the opportunity. Her next appointment was in 3 days. But she knew she couldn't wait. She had to get into his office. She had to get the original master recording, the one that fed directly into those cursed headphones. She had to capture the whisper before it told her to do something from which she could never come back. The night of the break-in, a thick, unseasonable fog rolled in from the harbor, blanketing the city in a damp, gray shroud. It muffled the sounds of the street, creating an atmosphere of isolation that mirrored Ava's own. Dressed in black, a small backpack containing her tools slung over her shoulder, she felt like a ghost haunting the edges of her own life. She had cased the building for 2 days. She knew the security guard, a heavy-set man named Arthur, took his dinner break at exactly 11:30 p.m., walking to a deli 2 blocks away. She knew the back alley had a fire escape that led to a second-floor window she'd noticed was left unlocked during her last visit. The window to a shared bathroom. At 11:35 p.m., the alley was a canyon of shadows and mist. The climb up the cold, slick metal of the fire escape was terrifying. Her gloved hands slipped twice. The city seemed to hold its breath below her. The window slid open with a faint groan. She slipped inside, her heart a frantic drum against the silence of the building. The hallway was dark, the only light a pale digital glow from a smoke detector. She moved slowly, every creak of the floorboards a cannon shot in the stillness. She reached the heavy oak door of the Somnus Clinic. The lock was a high-end Medico, but her research had paid off. Using a set of tension wrenches and a slimline pick, she went to work. The tumblers felt alien under her delicate probing. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Finally, with a faint, oily click, the lock gave way. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air in the clinic was just as she remembered it, cool, still, and unnaturally quiet. The acoustic paneling drank the sound of her footsteps. It felt like walking into a tomb. She didn't turn on the lights, using only the dim glow of her phone's screen to navigate. She bypassed the lobby and went straight to his inner office, the room with the 2 chairs. It was even more unnerving in the dark. The leather recliners looked like twin thrones waiting for occupants. Her goal was his computer, a sleek, minimalist machine sitting on a simple desk in the corner. She powered it on. The screen bathed the room in a cold blue light. It was, of course, password protected. She took a deep breath, her mind racing through what she knew of Marris, his obsession with Greek and Roman mythology. Somnus, the god of sleep. She tried hypnose, access denied. Morpheus, denied. Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. Access granted. A chill went down her spine. The desktop was clean, almost empty. Only a single custom software application. The icon was a stylized sound wave spiraling into a black circle. The name beneath it read, the shepherd. She clicked it open. The interface was stark and clinical. A list of patient files on the left. A complex audio editing suite on the right. She found her alias, Anna Mercer. She clicked it. 2 audio files appeared. Session 1 and Session 2. She opened the second one. The waveform appeared on the screen, and there it was. Plain as day in the visual data. Beneath the primary wavelength of his voice was a second, distinct line, a thick, dark band of infrasound at around 18 hertz. And embedded within that band, she could see them, tiny, rhythmic spikes in the audio. She plugged the parabolic microphone into her laptop, aimed it at the computer's speakers, and started her own recording software. Then, using Marris's program, she isolated the infrasound track. She put on her own headphones and pressed play. At first, there was only the low frequency pressure, the bone-deep hum, but her specialized microphone could pick up what her ears could not. On her laptop's recording monitor, the needle jumped, and through her headphones she heard it, the whisper, clear and insidious. It is safe to let go. There is no pain in the deep. Silence is release. Sleep is freedom, liberation. The voice was Marris's, but it was distorted, slowed, pitched down into something monstrous and persuasive. It was a subconscious command, a death sentence delivered in a whisper. She felt sick. Her hands trembled as she copied the master file onto a thumb drive. She had it. The proof. She was just about to eject the drive when she noticed another folder in the directory, one she hadn't seen before. It wasn't labeled with a patient's name. It was labeled the first dream. Curiosity overriding her fear, she clicked it. It contained a single, encrypted audio file and a text document. She opened the text file. It was a log, a list of dates, cities, and initials. Dallas, JP, London, AS, Tokyo, KM. It was a network, a list of other practitioners, other shepherds. And next to each entry was a status: awake, listening, waiting. A floorboard creaked in the hallway outside the office. Ava froze, her blood turning to ice. She hadn't heard the front door. He must have used another entrance. She killed the monitor and dove under the desk, pulling the chair in front of her, her body coiled into a tight ball of terror. The office door swung open. A sliver of light cut across the floor, followed by the silhouette of a man. He stood there for a long moment, perfectly still. She could hear him breathing, a slow, steady rhythm in the crushing silence. He didn't turn on the light. He didn't have to. The river of forgetfulness, a calm voice said in the darkness, Marris's voice. A clever choice, Anna. Or should I say, Dr. Rourke? He knew. He had known all along. Did you really think you were the first to come looking? He asked, his voice laced with something that sounded like pity. You can come out. There's no need to hide in the dark. The dark is my home, not yours. Slowly, Ava pushed herself out from under the desk. Her legs felt weak, her muscles screaming with tension. She stood, facing him in the gloom. The thumb drive felt like a burning coal in her clenched fist. Elian Marris stood by the door, a dark shape against the faint light of the hall. He took a step into the room, and the door swung shut behind him, plunging them into near total darkness. The only light was the faint, pulsing standby light on the computer monitor. It illuminated his face in brief, rhythmic flashes of green. He looked serene. I must admit, I'm disappointed, he said, his voice the same soothing baritone he used in his sessions. I thought you were making genuine progress. I felt your tension, your pain. It was quite real. You are carrying a great deal of it, aren't you, doctor? You're a murderer, Ava whispered, her voice trembling but defiant. He smiled, a flash of white in the dark. Am I? I have never laid a hand on anyone. I have never forced them to do anything. I simply open a door. I offer them a choice they were already making deep down. I offer liberation. He took another step closer. The air grew thick, heavy. Julian Croft, Annika Sharma. They were trapped, he continued, his voice weaving a seductive logic. In bodies that wouldn't rest, in lives that brought them nothing but anxiety. All I did was give them the key to their own cage, a key they willingly turned. You programmed them, Ava spat back, clutching the drive. You used infrasound to plant a suggestion in their subconscious. It's not a choice. It's a violation. Violation or clarification. He was circling her now, a predator in his own territory. Our minds are noisy, chaotic places, Doctor, full of fear, regret, conflicting desires. All I do is quiet the room so they can hear the one true desire that lies beneath it all. The desire for peace, for an end to the struggle. He stopped directly in front of her. She could smell the faint scent of lavender from his suit. He was so close, she could feel the warmth radiating from him. You know this struggle, he said, his voice dropping to an intimate, hypnotic whisper. I felt it in you. The boy. Your brother, Michael. Ava recoiled as if he had struck her. A wave of nausea and fury washed over her. Don't you dare speak his name. Why not? His memory is loud within you. A constant, screaming siren. The guilt you carry. You were the doctor, the smart one. Why couldn't you save him? Why didn't you hear his silence for what it was? His words were scalpels, expertly dissecting her. He was using her own grief, her own trauma, as a weapon. This was his true power. Not the technology, but his terrifying empathy, twisted into a tool of destruction. That's what this is about, isn't it? He murmured, leaning closer. His eyes, even in the dark, seemed to glow with a chilling intensity. You're trying to save them because you couldn't save him. A noble but futile effort. He reached out, not to touch her, but to gesture towards the empty recliner. You don't need a recording, Dr. Rourke. You don't need headphones. The frequency is already attuned. I can feel it in you. The seed is planted. All it needs is a little encouragement. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He began to speak in the same cadence he used for his sessions. The low, rhythmic, persuasive tone. You're so tired, Ava. You've been fighting for so long. The noise is so loud. Michael's voice. The questions. The guilt. Ava squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block him out, but his voice was everywhere. It was no longer just a sound. It was a physical pressure, wrapping around her, seeping into her pores. The room seemed to tilt. The memory of her brother rose up, no longer a sad echo, but a vivid, painful hallucination. She saw his empty dorm room, the note on his desk. You can let it go, Marris's voice purred, winding itself around the memory. You can be with him again, in the quiet, in the peace. The floor felt like it was falling away. She was sinking into a warm, dark ocean. The struggle, the fight, the need for justice. It all felt so heavy. It would be so easy to just let it all go, to stop fighting. "That's it," the voice whispered inside her head. "Sleep is freedom, Ava, true freedom." She saw the path from her dream, the one that led down into the dark. Michael was standing there at the end of it, beckoning her. He was smiling. It was a smile of release. Her hand, the one not clutching the drive, started to rise, her fingers curling as if to reach for him. The thought of release was intoxicating. A final, perfect silence. The abyss was warm, welcoming. The voice of Elian Marris was a gentle current, pulling her down into a final, dreamless sleep. The image of her brother Michael was so clear, so real. He wasn't beckoning her to her death. He was inviting her to rest. The distinction was dissolving. The pain of his loss, the guilt she had carried for a decade, Marris was offering to wash it all away. Liberation. The word echoed in the void of her mind. But as she drifted closer to that final surrender, another memory surfaced. It wasn't one of pain. It was a small, insignificant moment from years ago. She and Michael, teenagers, sitting on the roof of their childhood home, trying to learn a complicated chord progression on an old guitar. Michael was getting frustrated, ready to give up. "It's impossible," he had said, setting the guitar down. "No, it's not," she had answered, picking it up. "You're just trying to play the whole thing at once. Break it down. One note at a time. Find the first note, the anchor, the anchor." The word cut through the hypnotic fog. An anchor. A single, solid point in the swirling chaos. Marris was trying to unravel her, to dissolve her into her grief. She needed an anchor, a truth. She opened her eyes in the darkness of the office. Marris was standing before her, his face a mask of serene concentration, his voice a continuous, deadly lullaby. "Let go of the weight, Ava. The peace is waiting." "My name," she said, her voice a raw, croaking sound. It felt like pushing a boulder uphill. "My name is Ava Rourke." Marris faltered for a fraction of a second, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "Of course it is," he purred, recovering instantly. "And Ava Rourke is so very tired." "My name is Dr. Ava Rourke," she repeated, louder this time. She took a step back, planting her feet firmly on the floor. The anchor. "I am a psychiatrist." She was talking to herself as much as to him. It was a reverse hypnosis, a conscious reconstruction of her own identity against his assault. "I help people who are lost in the noise," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I do not lead them into silence. I lead them back to their own voice." "An admirable sentiment," Marris countered, his own voice hardening slightly, the soothing quality replaced by a sharp edge of command. "But your voice is gone, Ava. I am the only voice in this room now. Listen, listen to the silence I offer." The infrasound pressure in the room seemed to intensify. He wasn't using a recording, but his own voice, trained to produce those resonant, suggestive frequencies. It was a physical force. Her vision swam. The image of Michael returned, his face now pleading. "Come with me, Ava. It doesn't hurt." "He wouldn't say that," Ava choked out, tears streaming down her face now. Not tears of sorrow, but of fierce, defiant clarity. "You're using him. That's not him." She fumbled in her pocket for her phone, her fingers clumsy and numb. She pulled up the recording she had made, the clean one, without the subliminal track. The recording of his pure, hypnotic voice from their first session. She held up the phone and pressed play. His own words filled the room, the beautiful, poetic guidance about the mossy path and the setting sun. "Your mind already knows how to sleep. It has simply forgotten the path." It was a psychic battlefield, his live voice commanding her to surrender, his recorded voice offering a gentle, false peace. The two sounds warred in the small room, creating a dissonant, confusing hum. "What are you doing?" Marris hissed, taking a step back. "I'm finding the path," Ava said, her eyes locked on his. "Not your path, mine." She used his own technique against him, but in reverse. She wasn't listening to the words. She was focusing on the anchor, the memory of the guitar on the roof, the feeling of finding that first single note, her own mind, her own name. "Liberation isn't silence," she declared, her voice ringing with a power she didn't know she possessed. "Liberation is truth." With her free hand, she pulled the thumb drive from her fist, where she had been clutching it so tightly the edges had dug into her palm. She held it up. "And this is the truth, Elian. The whisper below the threshold, the voice that asks for nothing and takes everything." The spell was broken. The hallucination of her brother dissolved, not into darkness, but into a fond, sad memory, returned to its proper place. The pressure in her skull receded. She was back in her own mind, exhausted, trembling, but awake. Fully, terrifyingly awake. Marris stared at the thumb drive, then at her. The mask of the serene shepherd was gone. In its place was a look of cold, reptilian fury. The silence in the room was no longer his. It was hers. And in it, she could hear the distant, approaching wail of sirens. Before entering the building, she had made one phone call to Ben Carter. She had told him her location and a single code word they had established. Anomaly. The game was over. The arrest was quiet, almost anticlimactic. The police swarmed the building, and Elian Marris did not resist. He stood perfectly still as they cuffed him, his face once again a placid, unreadable mask. He looked not like a defeated criminal, but like a martyr being led to a foregone conclusion. Ava sat wrapped in a blanket in the back of an ambulance. The thumb drive safely in an evidence bag. She gave her statement, her voice hoarse but steady. She explained the infrasound, the subliminal commands, the network she had discovered. The lead detective listened, his expression grim. The evidence on the drive was undeniable, a digital confession. As they led Marris past her towards a squad car, he paused. He turned his head and his eyes met hers. There was no anger in them, no fear. There was only a cold, chilling certainty. "You've woken one dreamer, Doctor," he said, his voice a low murmur just for her. "But the dream is contagious. There are others who have heard the call. So many tired people, just waiting for permission to rest." He smiled, a thin, knowing smile. "I'm just the first dream. The night is long." He was placed in the car, the door shut, and he was gone. But his words hung in the foggy air, more terrifying than any threat. "I'm just the first dream." The weeks that followed were a blur of legal proceedings and media frenzy. The story of the hypnotic killer was sensationalized, his methods dissected on cable news. The files on his computer led to investigations in other cities, uncovering a horrifying, loosely connected web of practitioners using similar techniques. They called themselves the Shepherds of Silence. Marris was their prophet, their pioneer. Ava became an unwilling celebrity, the psychiatrist who outmaneuvered a master manipulator. But she found no victory in it. She felt only a profound, creeping dread. She had cut the head off the snake, but the body was still writhing. The story should end there. With the monster jailed, the victims avenged, the heroine finding peace. But horror is not about clean endings. It's about the echo that remains after the scream has faded. A young woman, no older than 30, sits in a chair, her face etched with the familiar exhaustion of chronic insomnia. She puts on a pair of sleek, silver headphones. They were sent to her as part of a free trial for a new, revolutionary sleep therapy app. She closes her eyes. A voice fills her head. It is not Elian Marris's voice. This one is younger, smoother, a voice of the digital age. "Welcome," the voice says, warm and inviting. "We're going to begin tonight's test session. The goal is simple: to help you find the quiet place you've been searching for. Let's start by taking a deep breath. Let it all go. The day is done. The struggle is over." The young woman sighs, a small smile touching her lips. She leans her head back, sinking into the chair. She doesn't feel the almost imperceptible thrumming that begins to emanate from the headphones. She doesn't hear the whisper beneath the voice, the new whisper coded into the new recording. The whisper that is not a suggestion, but a promise. The dream continues. Sleep is waiting. Sleep, is liberation.